You have the right to remain silent. You've heard that line 100 times, right? Movies, TV shows, crime dramas, they all hammer it in. If you say, I want a lawyer, boom, the cops have to stop. It's game over, right? Not so fast. In the real world, if you exercise your rights at the wrong time, they mean absolutely nothing. No pausing by the cops, no protection from interrogation, no lawyer provided. I'm Jeff Hampton, the People's Lawyer, and in today's video, I'm going to show you how this plays out in real life and how you can stop cops from using this new trick to ignore your rights to remain silent. In Texas, a man gets arrested. The first words out of his mouth, I need a lawyer. Eventually, the man breaks. He confesses, leads the cops to a body. The court, they ruled that everything the police did was legal. Picture a scared 14-year-old boy in a tiny interview room with a Texas Ranger blocking the door. The 14-year-old boy said nothing. He just sat there. No rights were read, no yelling, no force. But the cops still got a confession. Why? Because technically, he wasn't under arrest. Let's rewind for a second. Let's talk about how this is even possible. This brings us to the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals case of State versus Johnson. Meet Cedric Johnson. It's 2024. Cops suspect him as a suspect about a missing child, but he's actually picked up on some unrelated warrants. Now, the moment Cedric's brought in to the police station, before any rights are read, Cedric looks and says, I need a lawyer. Seems smart, right? I mean, this is a classic move. Most of us would feel like we're absolutely protected. But here's the twist. The police now claim he technically was not yet being interrogated. So his request for a lawyer? It just didn't count. The police then waited and waited. And after they had waited what they thought was long enough, they Mirandized Cedric. And of course, as they began to question him about the missing child, Cedric cracked and led them to Junior's body. When it went to trial, Cedric's attorneys got up in front of the court and argued this was an illegal confession, and the initial trial court agreed. But then the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals reversed. Their reasoning? They said Cedric actually asked for an attorney too early in the process. This is critical here. The Texas Court of Criminal Appeals said this. They said, if you're not yet in the middle of custodial interrogation, then your constitutional rights have not yet kicked in. Meaning, you can ask for a lawyer, loudly, clearly, but if you ask for a lawyer before they start to interrogate you, the cops can ignore your request. So yeah, timing matters, and that's the police trap. So wait a minute. When do your Miranda rights, your right to remain silent, when do they actually matter? Under the famous case of Miranda versus Arizona, in order for your Miranda rights to apply in your situation, you must meet two conditions. Number one, you must be in custody. And then number two, you must be currently in the process of being interrogated. Miss one of these? According to the court, your protections under the Constitution do not apply. And in Cedric Johnson's case, the court ruled, and I quote, the right to counsel and to remain silent does not attach anticipatorily. In other words, you can't call timeout if the game hasn't officially started. Imagine a chessboard. You sit down to play and you start making moves, but the clock hasn't even started. Now everything you said before the clock started and the game begins is totally in play and can be used against you by the police. But here's the real kicker. Cops don't even have to break the rules. They can just delay them. Now here's a big one. Cops are trained to keep things casual when they're talking to you. They'll say things like, oh no, you're not under arrest. Let's just come down to the station and we'll just chat for a few minutes. They'll never use the word custody because if they say custody, they know your rights kick in when you're in custody. Take the case of Emmanuel Ochoa, age 14. Suspected in a possible child abduction. The cops invite Emmanuel and his mom down to the police station. No handcuffs, no formalities here. Let's just get together and sit at the police station and have a little talk. The problem here, it was more than just a little talk. They brought them into an interview room, Emmanuel and his mother, and then a Texas Ranger proceeded to block the exit door, trapping them into the room. The entire time, they never read Emmanuel his Miranda rights. They never not only gave him a warning, they never gave him a chance to even speak to a lawyer. If you go back and read the case of Ochoa versus State, you'll find that Emmanuel did confess to the crime. But you'll also learn that the police claimed that Emmanuel was free to leave at any time during the interrogation, even though the Texas Ranger was blocking the exit door. Miraculously, the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals ruled that Ochoa's confession was illegal, but it took a miracle of appeal after appeal before this was actually analyzed properly. That's how fine the line is. So how do we fight back here and make sure and know if we're actually being considered in custody and our Miranda rights are kicking in? The first thing we must ask, am I free to leave? This is one of the most important things that you can say if you're beginning to be questioned or being cornered by police officers. If the cops say no, you're not free to leave, that is the number one way that you can know you are now in custody, and you should invoke your rights immediately. Officer, I exercise my right to remain silent. Officer, I exercise my Sixth Amendment right to counsel, and I will not say another word until my attorney is present. Now, I want to pause and ask you, how do we really know if the news we are reading is unbiased and fair? With competing narratives, media bias, and big tech censorship, cutting through the noise to see what's really happening isn't always easy. Luckily, there is a solution. Ground News gives you the freedom to discover whether what you are reading is unbiased and fair, so that you can come to your own conclusions. Isn't that what the news is supposed to be about? Check them out for yourself at ground.news/Hampton. Let's take the recent decision by the U.S. Department of Justice to abandon police reform settlements with Minneapolis and Louisville. Agreements that were initiated after the death of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. As we analyze the coverage, the top right displays key details: the number of sources reporting, their political bias distribution, reliability ratings, and ownership information. These insights help reveal how different outlets are shaping the narrative. One of the most powerful features of Ground News is the headline comparison. Here we can see for ourselves how stories are being framed by different news outlets. By clicking on the left, center, and right, we can observe the language and tone used, allowing us to draw our own conclusions. For instance, a left-leaning headline might focus on civil rights implications, while a right-leaning headline might emphasize federal overreach concerns. My favorite feature, though, is the blind spot feed. With Blind Spot, you can see news stories that are being disproportionately covered by one side of the political spectrum. In our polarized environment, I have found this feature to be an amazing resource to discover news stories that I might have missed otherwise because only one side was talking about it. It's perfect for better understanding friends and family who think differently. The best part? Ground News has a special offer for all of my viewers. If you sign up through my link, you'll get 40% off the Vantage plan, the same plan I use to get unlimited access to all their features. Go to ground.news/Hampton to give it a try yourself. Click the link down in the description or scan the QR code to stay better informed and transform the way you read the news. So you've asked if you are free to leave. You now know that you're in custody, so you're protected, right? Not so fast. Cops still have more tricks where they can legally get around your right to remain silent. One of the classic tricks that cops will use to get around your Miranda rights is to not ask you direct questions. They'll talk around you. They'll talk about you. They'll guilt trip you into things. They'll make you feel like you have to answer based upon your pride or maybe shame. This emotional pressure trick was first seen in the case of Rhode Island versus Ennis. Two cops are driving and a suspect's in the back seat. Now, they're not supposed to be asking him any questions because the first thing he did smartly was he invoked his right to remain silent and he invoked his right to an attorney. So instead of talking to the suspect in the back seat, the cops actually talk to each other. They start saying things like, "Man, there's this missing shotgun out there. And there's all these handicapped kids in the area. And there's this school over here. If any of these other kids find that missing shotgun, no telling what's going to happen." The suspect's back there the entire time. The cops just keep driving around the area. And eventually the kid cracks and ends up telling the cops where the shotgun is. The Supreme Court said, that's not an interrogation. It was merely a conversation and completely legal. So how do you protect yourself here? This might seem simple, but in the moment of the pressure and the cops driving you around doing this, potentially for hours, you've got to remind yourself, if the cops start to talk around you, keep silent. You've invoked your right to remain silent and your right to counsel. Stay silent. And when I say silent, I mean no joking, no commenting, literally no reactions at all. Even if the cops are talking casually around you, remember, there is no casual conversation with police officers. Always exercise your rights and never take anything for granted. Okay, so maybe you think, you know what? I don't want to screw this up. I'll just stay silent. I won't say a word. Is this a smart move? Actually, no. This is probably one of the most common tricks I see police officers use against people, and I see people fall for it all the time. And we first saw this happen in Burgess versus Tompkins. In this case, this guy stays silent for 3 hours. He says almost nothing. Then, after 3 hours of silence, the officer looks over at the suspect and says, "Do you ever pray to God for forgiveness?" And he says one word. He says yes. That one word. The court turned around and ruled it was a confession. Why? Because the court ruled that the suspect did not specifically invoke his right to remain silent after being silent for 3 hours. The lesson from Burgess versus Tompkins is that when it comes to the law, silence isn't silence. Cops can actually use your silence against you, and then if they ask some benign question and you respond to it, even a single word can be used against you. I don't know about you, but I think that's crazy. Tell me what you think down in the comments, but it's important that you understand you do not have a right to remain silent unless you open your mouth and say, "I exercise my right to remain silent." Finally, I'm going to leave you with 3 common misconceptions, and I'm going to clear them up because police expect for you to get these wrong. Myth number 1, saying "I want a lawyer" always works. The reality, it only works if you're technically in custody. Myth number 2, I have the right to just be silent. And just as we learned from reality in Burgess versus Tompkins, you don't have a right to remain silent unless you first open your mouth and exercise the right. And then myth number 3, if they don't read me my rights, then they can't use anything I say against me. The reality, that's not the way it works. You've got to be in custody and currently being interrogated for your Miranda rights to even kick in. And even in those situations where they may have violated your constitutional rights when it comes to a confession, it doesn't mean the actual case may end up being dismissed. Bottom line here, if you don't know the timing on your rights and when to use the magic words associated with your rights are paper thin. So how do we protect ourselves here? Number 1, if cops start asking you any questions at all, your rights have kicked in. You need to say, "I will not answer any questions. I exercise my right to remain silent, and I want a lawyer." That's it. No extra commentary, no back and forth. Say it and then shut your mouth. Why is this so important? Because we learned in the 1994 U.S. Supreme Court case of Davis versus United States that if someone says, "Maybe I should get a lawyer," that doesn't count. Unless you are crystal clear and direct about your rights, the cops can actually ignore your rights and you have no protection. I hate to tell you, not only do you have to know your rights, you've got to actually say your rights, and you've got to do it at the right time and in the right way. Cedric Johnson, he thought he did everything right. He didn't. His confession, it was used against him. The system knew the rules and the timing, but he didn't. Now you do. I don't know about you, but the fact that I have to do this video makes me angry because the court has ruled all of these exceptions and all of these nuances to the law where unless you know everything and exercise it at just the right time, your rights really don't mean very much. That means the police can lay a trap for you and others. So one of the best things that I'll tell you can do is that now that you know your rights, share this video with someone else so that they won't fall victim to the same trap. Now we've just covered how cops are using these new tricks to ignore your right to remain silent. But did you know cops can lie and trick you and do so legally? How should you respond? Check out this next video where I break down the 10 best responses to police officer lies and tricks so that you can protect yourself. See you over there.